Hi everybody and welcome to another video about the Phase 2 construction of Heaton Lodge Junction. You join me on top of Heaton Lodge Junction on the extension of the marshalling yard side. I've got to confess, a bit of a shorter video this week, simply because I have been here every day for hours having a huge blitz on laying track. Laying track, some of you will know, is not one of my favourite occupations. But it's a bit different around this side simply because it's going to be the marshalling yard, which is going to be scenic. So because of that, I kind of don't mind it as much, if that makes sense. So I've spent, as I just said, a few days down here. In fact, the best part of a week down here. I've even slept down here in the basement overnight because I just wanted to get this blitz on track done. So I'm going to show you what I've completed this last week. And we're going to have a look at the river, which took 2 or 3 kilograms of casting resin to complete. So, yeah, hang on for the ride and here we go again. Right, let's have a look at the River Calder, which I made back in, when was it now? Probably 2017. Now this took about 3 litres of casting resin to make, and it was quite a complicated one because basically the bottom underneath of the casting resin, which you're looking at now, is just bored, and I had to line that with sealant to make sure that the liquid casting resin didn't actually flood out of the end. I wasn't totally successful in that because I have spilt a fair bit on the floor. But it does look really effective. And all I did to get the mucky kind of greeny colour, which this river in Yorkshire really is, it's certainly not blue by any stretch of the imagination. All I did was add a few drops of greeny brown paint to it and mixed it in with the resin until I got round about the right kind of shade that I was after. And it's only then that you have to pour the resin in. I don't know, for those of you that might have seen that Hornby program that used to be on Channel 5 or Channel 4, can't remember, but they actually filmed me at the time making this river. and I was under stress because I had all the cameras here and everything and some lights. And the producer wanted me to pour this casting resin into the mold that I've made, that I've just told you about, with the sealant and everything. And I mixed all the mixture wrong, or incorrectly rather, and it all produced clouds of steam because I put way too much hardener in. And I thought I was going to have an explosion at one point. It was so embarrassing. And in fact, if you ever get to watch that again, you'll see that I actually swear under my breath. But anyway, in the end, I had to redo it again. I had to pour another layer on top, and it did work in the end. But doing rivers is really effective. Of course, you don't need anything as big as this. This is about 3 foot across, but it does look really good. It's a scale, I think it's probably 30-40 foot scale. The bridge, incidentally, is one that Alan Downs made for me back in 2012, 2013. And good old Alan, he made it look like it was from the Cotswolds, with this kind of Cotswold stone effect, which I got rid of, and I just rolled on the old Das clay, a thin layer of 2mm Das clay, on top of some PVA glue, onto the bare shell, the bare plywood shell. And then I just simply carved these stones into the clay with the end of a screwdriver. And I even put some little kind of bit more blobs of Das clay on top of the stones and kind of smoothed them in. So you get this jutting effect of the stones actually coming outwards. So because real stonework, especially that in Yorkshire, is really, it juts outwards. It's not smooth, or at least a lot of it that was used to build these big structures wasn't. Anyway, so yeah, all I've done here is I've rolled on Das clay. The white, for those of you that are wondering, is just meant to be bits of frost. And that wetness that you can see is actually just super glue, very, very thin super glue, just dribbled down that drain pipe and just left to dry, which kind of gives you a really good effect of a damp sort of damp stonework. So the sides of the embankment are just basically static grass. Now, we've been through that in the past before. That there is just some what we call it, postiche, or the canopy that it's sold by. We've been through that before in the static grass video, which I showed you a couple of months ago. And that you can just pull out, and you can spray it brown, or you can drop bits of dead leaves into it, and it just gives you that, just looks like weeds, which of course grow around bridge abutments or around the bottom of trees or whatever. Now, down on the pathway, all I've done here is I've sprinkled on the earth powder from Tree Mendus, which I've mentioned and used loads of times in these videos before. You can get it from Tree Mendus online, no affiliation, of course, but it does give you a really good effect of kind of just dusty, dirty ground, which is what you see on canal paths. The boat with the holes in comes from, I think it was 10 Commandments online. And it's just an upturned boat that I actually put into the resin as it was drying, pushed it in, and then when it dried, it kind of looks as though it's half sunk. And then with a nice little bench, which again, I think came from 10 Commandments, and of course the weeds or the rushes. So all in all, I'm really pleased with the way this turned out. Other thing is, I just, under the water, you can see there's like some ledges, because when I had a look down the real thing, there was kind of like stone ledges that rapidly fell off into deep water. So I've tried to mimic those by putting these, I think it was bits of slate underneath the casting resin before I poured the casting resin over the top. Can't get my words out today. So that gives a really good effect, and it's just a little bit lighter than the casting resin. So all in all, it's not difficult to do. We're going to be covering, because I am actually, talking of which, I am going to be recovering this whole river again with new casting resin in the next few weeks, because I want to make it a little bit deeper, and I'm going to redo all the sides of the river at the same time. So we'll cover that in a future video. But yeah, bridge made of plywood, rolled on das clay onto a coat of PVA glue and then carved with, when it's dry, with the end of a screwdriver, and then just painted a variety of watercolours. And of course, as I've just said, the wet effect is quite simply the super glue that I mentioned earlier. This bridge, this is a disused one. As on the real thing, this is still disused today. And this one, I think, was built in the 1930s, but was actually disused from about 1966. And again, this is just built out of Plastruct. It was another one that Alan Downs built for me. I've, again, just put some white kind of frosty coating on top because this layout, as most of you know, is set in the winter. But it's a shame. I've always wondered why I never really used that. And I guess I'm answering my own question, really, because it's disused in real life. But it's a shame because out of the two bridges, it actually looks the more impressive of the two. So there we have the river bridge, the river, and the sides of the river itself. Let's move on to this disused warehouse next door. We covered the other one with the mini outside a few weeks ago. This one is very similar. This one's got an old Sherpa van body, which is an old die-cast toy in there, loads of just old fiberboard, some old bits of wood that I've chucked in. I've also put, as you can see, some graffiti on there, a bit more what looks like water on top, some old barbed wire. Again, we've got the danger keep out fencing signs, which you always get just in front of derelict buildings. But derelict buildings do make a really interesting addition to any layout, and it's just a case of buying a kit or even building or even buying one ready built and just, well, for the sake of a better expression, bastardizing it, which is just basically rip it apart and put bits of it back together. This is just perspex that I've broken and inserted to show the broken windows. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that too. That stood around until probably the mid-1980s, and then this one was demolished again with the other one over there. You can just see in the background. Got an old IXO 143 gauge truck trailer there, and again, then we've just got the old roads or cart tracks that we've actually talked about doing in previous videos as well. So I thought that might give you some inspiration for building something and making it look a bit derelict, because all you need to do is smash the windows, put a security fence around it, add lots of bits of fiberboard, lots of that tremendous earth powder, bits of wood, poles, pipes, an old car body or van body, and hey presto, you have got a derelict building. And it's something that draws the eye. Again, I rarely see it modelled, but it's interesting and I think it's well worth doing. So there we go. Now we're about 40 metres east of the river that we were just looking at. And this is, as you can see, just a little stream or a beck. Again, one that's very easy to include in any gauge, in any layout. And they're just good because you can just add little details, which again catches people's eyes. I don't know if you can just see that. That's a buried tyre, half in the mud and half in the water itself. That's just a pallet that I put in there. And I got this kind of inspiration myself because I remember as a child playing in it, and these sort of things were there. You can see at the side of the river or the little stream, there's bits of brick wall as well. And if I can just get the camera to see if I can, you can just see, if I just enlarge there, where the archway is, and that's got some rusty iron bars which stop rubbish and all sorts of other junk flowing through and blocking up the canal itself. That side of that little bridge, again, is just plywood cut with a jigsaw, just to make the same basic shape. And all I've done, again, like the other bridges I've done on this layout, is roll on some das clay onto the plywood itself. I've put a bed of PVA glue, thin bed of glue there, and then once it's all dry, I've just scribed the stonework with the end of a screwdriver, and I've also then put little dabs of Das clay onto each stone. I know this is a bit labour intensive, but then you can file the bits of stone back to get that jutting out effect that I mentioned earlier. And it's really, really effective. You can probably just see there's a BMX bike down there. That's meant to be mine, but I don't think I was lucky enough to have a BMX bike when I was a kid. But anyway, that is the bridge and the little river, which again, you can easily add to any gauge layout. Let's just have a look at the track while we're here too. Now, these little yellow markings on the sleepers, again, something you can add to your own layout. I think they were done by gangers to mark where sleepers needed replacing. Somebody might be able to correct me on that. But what I'm not sure about is on here, on the concrete trunking, we've covered concrete trunking in a previous video. If any of you aren't sure how to make it, just go back and look at some of my videos. And I think it's on the thumbnail for one video about 2 months ago. And it shows you how to make concrete trunking. But these yellow marks, I am not sure what they're for, but they were certainly on the concrete trunking that I was copying on the real location. And I know some of you like these points here. Let's just have a look. These are hand-built points. Now, I've got to confess that I had these points made. I am not skilled enough to make hand-built track to this standard, but certainly I did add some of the detail, and even the little that's just layout wire, is the black wire that goes under the track to connect the point motors up to the what is meant to be the electric supply under the concrete trunking. And it's something, again, you can add to your own layouts. This is an interesting thing because this is an overflow, which, again, I rarely see modelled. This is on the real thing, but it's something else you can add to your own layout. And all you need to do is build an embankment and just build basically what is steps, and then just dribble down casting resin. And once it's dry, it looks really, really epic. This one had a drain cover at the bottom, still has in fact, and then obviously it goes underneath the track and then it comes out the other side here. But all these things, obviously, I've copied off the real location. I wouldn't have had the inspiration to do that unless I was doing a model of the real thing, which obviously I have been. In the middle of these tracks, you've got all sorts of other bits and pieces like old concrete sleepers, old bits of rails, a wooden sleeper there. There's even an old toolbox there, which again you found between running rails going back 20, 30, 40 years ago. A couple of, they're not relay boxes, they're actually tool cabinets there. So again, there's lots and lots of things that hopefully will give you guys some inspiration to add to your own layouts. But we'll look at these gantries in better detail in the future, because these were made by Absolute Aspects and I detailed and painted them, but we'll come back to those in a future video. So there we go, things to add to your own layout. The old stream with the bridge. Let's go and have a look at progress on the marshalling yard extension itself. Right, so let me show you what I've been doing since we last met. Yeah, for the last week, I have been flat out doing track laying. For those of you that know me pretty well from these videos, I try not to do one job all the time for days on end because you get bored, you get despondent, you go home and then you just don't want to come back the next day. But having said that, I had to do a blitz on track laying because without track down, there's not much you can do scenic wise or anything else. And as you all know, this is going to take a hell of a lot of ballast to ballast all this. So to come back to what I was saying at the beginning, this is what I've laid since we last met. You can see that tripod standing on the layout. That is where I started about a week ago. So what I've done is these two lines that I'm following now are the two innermost main lines, and I have built 4 storage sidings for these main lines, which of course join to that main line number 2. And I think I've done about 30 or 40 foot on each of the storage sidings. Let's follow it down. We've still got to go another 20 foot, which is probably about to here. And then those storage sidings are going to merge onto the track number 2 or the 2 innermost main lines. So they're going to go to about here. So that's what we've done at this side. Now let's just have a jump over to the other side. Right, so looking from the other side, you can see where that tripod is. Just to the right of the tripod, you can see way in the distance the MGR wagons. So what I've done is I've finished the MGR sidings. I've merged 3 or 4 storage roads into one and then brought them down, just following it in the camera, via a double slip. Now actually, this is the first time I have laid a double slip. I think I've laid just about every form of track before, but a double slip has eluded me until now. But I needed it because partway through the double slip, it leads off to the fuel storage depot, which is going to be just here. So basically, just to recap, on this other side, you can just see, again, where the tripod is. I've brought the track, or at least one of the 2 main lines on this side. I've finished the MGR sidings that connect to it and just brought it round to here. Actually, when you look at it now, it doesn't look as though I've done that much, but honestly, drilling, and those of you who have laid a lot of track, you'll know it's quite laborious sometimes lining everything up because you've got to get the track absolutely dead straight, because if it's not, it just doesn't look right, does it? So from the tripod all the way down here is what I have laid this week. So I'm quite pleased with that. It's going all right. Again, I don't like doing one job for days on end, but in this case, I just had to do it because without the track down, as I said earlier, there's not much point in doing anything. You've got to get the track down first, and the track is now down up to here. I've still got, way in the distance, I've got to go another, I'd say it's another 80 to 100 feet, but once I get cracking, it'll all be fine. So there we go, the track laying has commenced in earnest. Now, a few people who've been watching my videos have been asking about the basement itself. It's quite interesting, really, because this basement is absolutely huge. It's the underground, or the basement, obviously, of a large, what used to be a steel making factory. And these columns, these iron columns, of which I think there's 18 altogether, support the whole factory building, which is largely disused above me. Sometimes you can pick up some sounds from the company that's above that make tiles, but apart from that, it's largely disused. What's really interesting about these pillars, and like some of you guys, I really enjoy engineering and things like that. These pillars are cast iron. They were built in the 1880s. And when I was actually building the layout initially in 2018, I discovered by using a laser level that these pillars are absolutely to a millimetre dead in line with each other. Not only that, they're exactly the same distance apart all the way down the 200 foot of the layout, which is pretty incredible given, you know, we're talking about Victorian era. Now, I used about 5,000 litres of white paint. You'll just see some pictures coming up now of the basement when I first got the keys to it. And it was just out of sheer coincidence that the basement happened to be 200 feet long, and Heaton Lodge was destined to be 200 feet long as well. It was always going to be 200 feet long. And I should apologise for the mess down here because it is a bit of a mess at the minute. But yes, it took about 6 months of spraying white paint all over the walls, the ceiling, 5,000 litres in total, would you believe? But I just needed to get it into such a condition that it was, you know, I could work it. All the lights, strip lights, etc., etc. I wired all these up from YouTube videos. They don't conform to any health and safety regulations whatsoever. I'm only joking. But yeah, they work, and it is just amazing what you can find off YouTube videos. The stud work you can just see there is my living room, which is where I crash out when I've had enough and I'm pulling my hair out when things go wrong, which they very often do, as I'm sure you all modelers all know yourselves. So I'm going to take you in that living room in a minute and just show you a little bit behind the scenes. But that is the basement for you, and you can see from the pictures how it was just before I brought the layout in back in 2018. So yeah, I knew I'd be spending an awful lot of time down here from 2018 onwards when the railway first landed in the basement. So I built this little lounge which suits me fine with a nice sofa, etc., etc. Yeah, and I crash out here, even being known to have a beer or two, watching the trains go by. But it is actually, in all seriousness, you know, I have slept down here a couple of times because, you know, it gets late at night. You don't know whether it's night or day. In fact, you don't even know there's a nuclear war going on outside when you're down here. But yeah, nice little office there. And if we go through, I'll even show you, for the purpose of the camera today, because I knew you were coming, I've even hoovered it up or given it a vac. So this is my workshop, and all my bits. I try to keep it fairly tidy, but I can tell you now that it doesn't end up very tidy a lot of the time. But it is great to have a workshop where I can modify things and I can make things and then take them out to the layout, which is right next door. So we'll walk back out through the basement, and yeah, now you've seen behind the scenes. Right, that's it for this week. Just remains for me to say thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe. Sorry it was a bit of a shorter video this week, but as you know, I've just been flat out just doing one job, laying track. Bit different next week. Again, to those of you that have contributed to the crowdfunding campaign, link is in the description as ever. Just want to say a massive thank you. It all helps. I'm just so looking forward to getting this project finished because it's going to go out all over the UK, actually mainly attached to out-of-town shopping centres, but more in that in a future video. So yeah, it's going to be great. We're all going to enjoy it, and thanks again for watching, and have a great weekend.